Father-in-law smeared my name over a missing iPad, my wife never stood by me, and now our marriage is crumbling. My 27M wife, 29F, and I aren't in a good place. It's not a fun feeling. I feel context is important here. We're college sweethearts married for 6 years and have a daughter, 4F. Our constant hurdle is family. It's like having to validate our relationship. I always thought my wife was worth it, though. I haven't felt for anyone else the way I do about her. My wife's family is very old school. They're conservative in their beliefs and values. My Phil, 59M, is treated as the captain and looked to as the head. My relationship with him was never smooth, not for my lack of trying. Him putting up with me only came after my daughter. I don't believe he's ever thought I was good enough for his daughter. I wasn't his first choice or in his top 5. I don't share their gated community or fancy schools background. My Phil always had some backhanded remark about my upbringing. During a family gathering at my in-laws last Christmas, my Phil's iPad went missing. He blew a fuse and accused me of stealing it. His reasoning was there was a period of time I was alone in the house. I was never actually alone in the house. I was helping my Mill, 58F, in the kitchen because people were kicking back their feet while she was slaving away for a big family. There was no reasoning with him. He called the police and actually told the officers how a real man would own up when caught, but I was never taught to be a man. Another backhanded remark. I was raised in a household of women. My Phil expressed once that only a man can raise a boy into a man. I spoke up for myself during his rantings. The whole situation was humiliating, but I had nothing to hide. The officers had to de-escalate and stood around until everyone went their separate ways. My Phil did a smear campaign on social media accusing me of theft and saying how I wasn't family. Some real vicious stuff was said. It impacted my life. I lost a job opportunity because his posts came up in the vetting process. The company was rebranding and didn't want drama associated. Essentially, I was shunned from the family. There were those who didn't agree with my Phil, but they wanted to stay out of it. No one wanted to cross him. I was no longer welcomed on my in-laws' property until I confessed and apologized. My wife still attended everything without me and took our daughter with her even on Nye. I wanted to spend it with her and our daughter, but she chose to appease her dad and keep tradition. During all of my Phil's accusations, the smear campaign, and shunning, my wife didn't lend me support in any way. She bowed to her dad and would tell me to just apologize. She said I was being stubborn by refusing. It wasn't about apologizing. My Phil wanted me to beg. I'm not a prideful person, but I'm not getting on my knees and pleading for forgiveness for something I didn't commit. My wife said she was only trying to keep the peace instead of being right. Once my Phil badmouthed me around our daughter, and my wife never spoke up. She claimed she didn't hear him. I don't believe she would have done anything either way. Our daughter kept me afloat. I put my foot down on her attending gatherings after the badmouthing. My wife accused me of escalating by withholding our daughter. I felt my Phil tried to influence my child against me. My move was for boundaries. I wasn't asking my wife to cut off her dad. I know how important family is to her. But we're married. We have a child. We made vows. I only wanted her to be there for me as my partner and best friend. She abandoned me. I had more support from my Mill and Sil, 35F, than I ever did from her. We fought a lot. We were pushed to a new level of argument. I held everything in, and we'd blow up. My wife said she'd dealt with her dad her whole life, and she learned sometimes it was better to just yield. About a month ago, my name was cleared. My Sil found the iPad in her son's, 9M, room. He confessed to taking it. He was afraid to say anything after my Phil's reaction to me. My Phil has never apologized or publicly recanted. He acts like nothing happened, and the rest of the family followed suit. He had my Mill relay that I was welcome to their home again. Others began inviting me to functions. I've declined for myself and my daughter. I'm not holding grudges or using my daughter as punishment. I saw who my Phil was clearly. I don't want any involvement with him unless necessary, nor is my daughter allowed to have unsupervised visits with him. I don't want her exposed to the ugliness. The situation remains a sore on my marriage. My wife won't talk about it. If I try, she says I'm throwing the past in her face. I'm just trying to open up to her about how everything still affects me. She feels I'm not working toward keeping the peace. My Phil falsely accused me of theft, led a smear campaign, badmouthed me around our daughter, and was enabled by some family. This is me keeping the peace. I'd if this post is the right call. My wife wouldn't approve, but there's no talking to her about this in any real way. I'm lost. We've never been so disconnected. I'm in love with her. I wouldn't have stayed if I wasn't. I want to work on our marriage and do right by our daughter. I don't regret my choice on my Phil, but I am questioning if I'm making things worse. I feel alone. I need a fresh perspective. How do I move forward as healthily as possible for my marriage when I'd quit a step? Update 1. She knew I didn't do it. She just never stood up to her dad in any way or offer any support. She folded and checked out on me and left it to me meet these demands of taking ownership. It's made me question our relationship. Wow. I would just simply say you and your daughter won't be attending anything without a full written apology from Phil. But your marriage is probably done tbh. Yeah, I made it known that I had no intent of participating with my Phil more than necessary and no unsupervised visits for my daughter. When my Phil wanted an apology, I was told I was being stubborn. When he never offer not me an apology, I'm told I'm not letting the past go. I just really expected more from my wife. You lost a job? Get a lawyer. If your wife won't take your side, the legal system may. Beyond that, you don't have issues in your relationship because of your wife's family, you have issues in your relationship because of your wife. It also seems like you have a long way to go with being able to deal with conflict and set boundaries. This would be what I would focus on, along with other ways of self-improvement. You can't individually fix a relationship, but you can change and grow, and either the relationship grows with you or you grow out of it. I was up for an interview. It was an opportunity for another field I was looking to get into. I'd where to go in my marriage from here. She does everything in her power to avoid the elephant in the room. It's like she doesn't want to acknowledge how much on separate sides we were. I mentioned counseling and she said we didn't need more people in family business. I honestly didn't know things were this bad with her dad until later. The most distance she got from him when we were in college. She had told me she purposefully chose a school further away from home and she didn't go home as much on breaks. She said she just wanted to break off on her own. Her work took us back near her parents and she kinda went back into the fold, but even then, I didn't expect her to just ditch me like she did. We faced some pushback from my Phil and her position wasn't so severe. I feel like things blew up. She had to make a decision. SND, she chose to go along to get along with her dad. What hurts is that she knew I wasn't guilty but still chose him. Even in private there were no words of comfort from her. She just kept urging me to apologize to her dad. Update 2. I, 27M, want to thank everyone for the support. I appreciate it. The original post was the first time I put everything out there and didn't feel dismissed. The situation with my Phil, 59M, was extensive and largely unaddressed by my wife, 29F. It occurred to me that, not being able to open up to her, I didn't know how to communicate with her anymore. The feedback I received was a real eye-opener. My issue isn't isolated to my Phil. This isn't solely a spat with in-laws. It's an issue involving my wife. Things with my Phil are what they are. I'm not seeking a deeper connection with him. We're in-laws, nothing more, nothing less, and he made it abundantly clear in his smear campaign that I wasn't family but a hurdle the family needed to overcome. My concern is my wife and our daughter, 4F. They're my family and my focus. That said, I realize I can't make my wife do anything. I can't make her communicate with me, I can't make her instill boundaries with her dad. I only have a say for myself and our daughter. I know something needs to change. Our marriage can't be sustained this way. It's not good for anyone, especially our daughter. After getting my feelings out, I felt more resolved with what I needed to do. I told my wife about the original post. She's seen it in some comments. She wasn't thrilled, but to her credit, she didn't automatically shut me down like usual. She was open to hearing what I had to say. I'd give ultimatum is the right term because I wasn't trying to force her to choose anything. I'm just trying to implement boundaries for our daughter and our marriage. I told her that things needed to change because our marriage couldn't survive like this. No one should feel alone or abandoned in their marriage. The options were either couples therapy or separation. She didn't take to separation well. She seemed repulsed by it. She said she knew we weren't in a good place, but she didn't realize that was where I was at and how we made vows and our bond is supposed to withstand. She feels her dad shouldn't take away from us. I told her I wasn't taking separation lightly. Our vows do mean something, but whether she admits it or not, she checked out on our vows in favor of her dad. It wasn't keeping the peace. It was me drowning while she was on her dad's boat and never tossed me a line. Our issues are bigger than just her dad. Our current way isn't it. My wife chose therapy. We found a therapist, and it's officially scheduled. I want to be hopeful, but that's not something I've let myself feel for a bit now. I don't believe she was only telling me what she thought I wanted to hear. I saw the reality of it hit her when separation was put on the table. I asked her if MC was something she really wanted. I'm not talking about the sometimes it's better to yield thing she said about her dad or for keeping the peace. I was asking what she genuinely wanted. She said it was and that she doesn't want to lose our relationship or our family. Some have questioned why I'd want to try working on my marriage. It's not about staying for our daughter. I want to make a real attempt for my family and see if things can be mended. I know there's more to my wife than just my Phil. I fell in love with her because of who she was as a person. When we met and got to know each other, it was away from her dad. I saw how caring she was for others even if she didn't agree with their POV, how decent she was, and how she had a weight off her shoulders with distance from her dad's shadow. My wife is the youngest of her siblings, and I would say my in-laws hold on to her more tightly. I didn't know how bad things were until I actually dealt with my Phil. It's why she chose a long-distance school and didn't go home on breaks often. Her work moved us closer to home, and she was back into the fold fully. My Phil smear campaign was our first major obstacle following that. I'm in love with my wife, but I'm not speaking out of blind love. Whether we're together or not, I want the best for her. Part of my hope for MC is that she regains sight of herself separate from her dad and sees that boundaries for herself aren't crossing a line. Maybe we can recover together and come out better for it. I know we got married a little young. Trust me, we'd heard our fair share from the skeptics, but I was always sure of my wife. Marriage wasn't something I took lightly. I didn't expect there to be nothing but clear skies. But we should want more from each other. Being there for each other and emotional intimacy are the bare minimum. We should be a team. Our family is the core before any other relationship. To me, our vows mean consciously choosing each other and committing to each other even when it's hard. I'd what MC will bring. It'll be my first experience with therapy. All I can do is take everything one step at a time and reaffirm boundaries for myself and my daughter. I'm not withholding my daughter as punishment or holding grudges. I don't even want an apology from my Phil because I know it'll be empty. I'm just done giving him any more power. I'm protecting my daughter too. To those who haven't experienced something like this, I hope you never will, and for those in a similar struggle, I hope for nothing but the best for you. You're not alone. Thank you for showing me that I'm not either. Update 3. Thanks to everyone who's still checking in and giving support. Since my last update, a lot's happened, honestly more than I expected. My wife and I have started couples therapy, which has been challenging but surprisingly clarifying. Our therapist is direct, and it's been both painful and necessary to hear some of the things that have come up. The very first session, my wife broke down after describing her own childhood, something she's rarely done, especially with me. She tends to compartmentalize anything to do with her family. She admitted, in front of someone else, which I think helped her be more honest, that her go along to get along mentality was all she knew growing up, that appeasing her father had always been a way to protect herself and her sisters from worse. I think hearing her say out loud that she checked out on me and our marriage was something she needed for herself, almost more than for me. That was the first big shock. The real surprise came when our therapist suggested a joint session with her mother and her sister, the same Sil who found the iPad. My wife bristled, but after talking privately with her mom, she finally agreed. If I'm honest, I went in expecting awkwardness or stonewalling. Instead, it was the most revealing 2 hours of my life. My Mill opened up about her regrets over enabling my Phil's behavior, not just to me but in general, how for decades she folded, justified. She even apologized to me for remaining silent during the theft accusations. My Sil was more blunt. She said she wished she'd spoken up sooner, but seeing her father's smear job and my wife's silence made her realize just how deep their dad's control went. Even she hadn't realized the extent. The biggest twist, my Mill admitted she'd been quietly talking to a divorce lawyer. She said she'd always imagined her children or grandchildren would be the reason she finally needed to take a stand, and the whole iPad debacle was her last straw. That floored everyone, including my wife. Suddenly, it wasn't just our marriage under the microscope, but the whole framework of my wife's family. My Phil still has no clue, he's as imperious as ever, but the tectonic plates are shifting beneath him. The therapy made my wife realize how much she's been living reflexively, acting on autopilot when it comes to her dad instead of consciously choosing her responses. There was one point when I brought up how alone I felt, not just last year, but every time her dad weighed in on our life, from where we lived to how we parented. My wife heard me, really heard it, and sat with it. We both cried, a first in way too long. She apologized, not the sorry you feel that way type, but a full-out I'm sorry I abandoned you, and I want to fight for us now apology. But it hasn't all been late-night tears and hugs. There's been tension, particularly around boundaries with her family. She wanted to go to Easter dinner and bring our daughter, and I stuck to my guns about not letting her go unsupervised. I explained I'm not comfortable leaving her alone with someone who tried to poison her against me. We compromised on a short, supervised visit, both of us present, no sleepover. It was tense. My Phil played at being gracious, but his pettiness poked through. He kept mentioning how family is about forgiveness, never actually apologizing, naturally. But I realized my wife had changed. When her father said something dismissive about me, she immediately contradicted him, gently but firmly. I think it surprised him, too, because he changed the subject rather than escalating. Another major development, my wife, for the first time, is actively seeking a job out of state. I didn't push, didn't even bring it up, but she told me she wants to put distance between herself and her father, even if it means uprooting again. For the first time since we returned here, she's excited at the thought. She's even discussing what boundaries look like going forward, no more just keeping the peace. Protecting our family and our marriage comes first. Meanwhile, my Mill is quietly preparing her exit strategy, my Sil is encouraging my wife, and for once, there's talk about what our lives could look like, without the constant shadow of my Phil. My wife and I are cautiously rebuilding. There's no quick fix, but for the first time, I'm hopeful that we're on the same team again. I'm not naive about relapses, we're still in therapy, and I still have trust to rebuild, but it feels like we've reached a turning point. One completely unexpected but good thing, my relationship with my Mill and Sil has transformed. My Mill has started inviting us, not her husband, to little get-togethers independent of family drama. It's been healing, especially for my daughter, who never did understand why Grandpa was so angry that Christmas. I won't lie, there are days when it all feels overwhelming. I'm still rebuilding my confidence work-wise after losing that job opportunity. I started doing contract work and tried a few career changes, and it's finally stabilizing. My wife jokes that for the first time, she feels like she is the one protecting us, not just me. We're both learning what that means, for ourselves and for our daughter. There's still a long way to go, and honestly, I don't know if her family will ever truly change, but we are. And that, for the first time in a long while, feels like something solid to stand on. We're not fully there, but for the first time since all this began, I genuinely believe there's a future worth fighting for. Update 4. I'm honestly amazed at the outpouring of support and the people still checking for updates. If you'd told me a year ago that my marriage would look like this, or that the walls in my wife's family would start to crack, I wouldn't have believed it. A lot has happened, some of it wild, some of it deeply quiet, all of it reshaping my life and hers. So, after my last update, things didn't slow down. Therapy continued, and so did the revelations. My wife started individual sessions, at the therapist's suggestion, and that's become a bigger deal than I expected. She's been digging into the memories she'd always kept sealed, childhood Easters when her father's approval came with strings and threats, her first relationship that ended just because her dad disliked her boyfriend's family, years of walking on eggshells at home. She admitted to me, through tears, but also through frustration, and hope, that as a kid she used to dream of just having 1 year without her dad dominating everything. She never told anyone before. A few weeks ago, something happened that changed the direction of everything. My Phil's birthday. He threw the usual over-the-top bash, family only, but this time there was a palpable shift. My wife told him in advance, no more unsupervised, no more pretending nothing had happened, and that she'd be late, not helping set up. He was livid, but she didn't fold. For the first time, she stayed late at work on purpose, walked in with me and our daughter. I'd agreed for my wife's sake to a brief appearance, and the room felt different. My Sil and Mill stuck to our side of the table, and it wasn't subtle. The cousins gravitated to us. My Phil kept trying to steer conversations, and each time my wife or Sil gently, but persistently, shut it down. Then my Phil made a joke, something about people who can't admit when they're wrong, always so proud. I just looked away, biting my lip, but my wife said, "You mean people who accuse others to avoid their own discomfort?" The table fell absolutely silent. My wife's hands were shaking, I could see it, but she held his gaze. For the first time in my memory, my Phil just stopped. No rant, no escalation. He stood, took his dinner into the kitchen, and slammed the door. No one followed. It was an odd relief, an awkward, jarring break from the pattern. Even my Mill looked stunned. My wife held my hand under the table. Our daughter didn't seem fazed. She was playing with a cousin and just chirped, "Mommy, is Grandpa mad?" My wife answered, "Adults get sad and mad sometimes too, baby. That's not your fault." I nearly cried right there. Later that week, my Mill called us, voice trembling. She had officially opened her own bank account, taken copies of all her essential paperwork, and secured a P.O. box for attorney correspondence. She told my wife not to blame herself, that her father's anger had been building for decades, but seeing the next generation, us, and especially our daughter, being brought into it was the breaking point. My Sil is actively supporting her plan, helping with logistics. She's quietly telling the cousins that sometimes grown-ups have to make uncomfortable changes for their own health. In therapy, my wife dropped another bombshell. She wants to move, not someday, but now. She put in for 3 jobs, 1 in a neighboring state, 2 a few hours away. I was honest, I'm scared of uprooting, especially with our daughter, and anxious about restarting my own career for the umpteenth time. But she said, "I want our daughter to know what it's like to grow up in a home that isn't about someone else's anger." The wildest twist, though, one of the jobs reached out, a non-profit in a city about 4 hours away. They offered her a final round interview. She took a long weekend, and I went too, kid in tow. The city felt different, no one knew our drama, we could walk around and be just us. We sought out parks and coffee shops, and our daughter made fast friends with a little girl at a splash pad. There were no expectations, no judging eyes. That night in the hotel, my wife said it felt like breathing for the first time in years. That trip did something, galvanized us in a way that therapy alone couldn't. On the drive back, my wife said the move might mean leaving family behind, for a while, but she wanted to build something better, for us, for our daughter, and honestly, for herself. She apologized again, not in a self-blaming way, but as a woman ready to make her own choices for the first time. Back home, we started the limbo dance. My wife's job offer came through, lower pay than her current role but flexible, family-focused, and no proximity to her father's network. My contract work could transfer, with some effort. After some deep talks, we accepted it. We found a rental house and are making plans to move in just a few weeks. Meanwhile, the split in my wife's family has gone from cracks to full fissures. My Phil senses something but can't quite put his finger on it. My Mill is stone-faced when he rages, and my Sil stays busy with work and her kids. The grapevine is buzzing. In the gated community, any whisper is news, so there have already been some weird, awkward emails from my Phil to my wife about how family needs to stick together and forgiveness is an act of strength. We ignored them. Last Sunday, my Mill came over to help us pack. She sat on our living room floor with my wife, sorting through baby clothes and telling funny stories about when her kids were little, not stories about my Phil, but about her own mother and sisters, family picnics, and quiet moments. She hugged my wife, said she wished she'd chosen herself sooner, and then said, "Take your little family and start clean. I'll join you soon, I hope." My wife and I are still in therapy, remote sessions arranged for after the move. Not everything is magically healed. I still wrestle with resentment, especially when I see my daughter's little face and remember how close I came to losing my footing as a dad. But I don't feel alone anymore. We hold each other up, and in those quiet middle of the night moments when our daughter sneaks into our bed, my wife wraps her arms around us both and just breathes, and I know we're going to be okay. It's not a fairy tale ending, there's still fallout to come. My Phil's reaction to my wife leaving, my Mill's eventual departure, the adjusting to a new city and new routines. But for the first time, I feel like we're writing our own story. Our daughter's world is bigger than one man's anger now. Our life is being built on something sturdier, honesty, boundaries, and our own hard-earned peace. Update 5. This is the first time in years I'm writing this with actual hope instead of just dogged determination. I appreciate anyone who's still here for the, frankly stranger than fiction, journey. The last few weeks have been wild. Messy, illuminating, sometimes exhausting, sometimes hilarious, like suddenly waking up in the life you always wanted, then realizing you have no training wheels. The move is official. As in, I'm typing this with boxes stacked against bare walls, our daughter sprawled on her new bedroom floor surrounded by half-unpacked books, and my wife sitting at the dining table, her office until furniture arrives. We're in the new city. We did it. Our last 2 weeks in our old place were a tornado. My wife's father caught wind of the move. I honestly thought there'd be some grand pronouncement, threats, rage, the usual spectacle. Instead, he went silent for days, then sent a single-paragraph email to my wife: "Family does not abandon family. You will regret this." My wife read it twice, then closed her laptop and asked, "Want to go get ice cream?" She didn't cry, she didn't sink into that old guilt spiral. She asked if she could forward the email to her therapist, then said, "Let him stew in his own drama." Packing was surreal. Mill dropped by every night for a week, helping pack toys, clothes, even our awful collection of too many mugs. She quietly handed my wife a letter, sealed in an envelope, and said, "For once you get settled." Later, my wife showed it to me, a real apology, no hedging, no asking for pity. Mill wrote that what she wanted most for her daughter was freedom, not just from her husband, but from the idea that her happiness had to be bought with someone else's comfort. Dad's farewell, or lack thereof. Phil didn't show up on moving day. Actually, no one from his orbit came except Mill and Sil, who brought donuts and coffee and kept the mood as light as possible. Even as we loaded the last of the boxes, I half expected a final confrontation. None came. That quietly spoke volumes, that, and the fact he called Mill 6 times that day. And she didn't answer. We pulled out of the driveway, daughter in the backseat singing about Adventure Town, and my wife squeezed my hand so tightly I had to drive one-handed for half an hour. 4 hours, lamplight, and an exhausted kid later, we arrived in our new rental. It's old, a little drafty, with creaky stairs and peeling paint on the porch. But it is, 100%, ours. The city and the blink there's an absurd freedom to living in a place nobody knows your history. We went for groceries and the cashier asked our daughter if she liked the sample cookies. No one called her a daddy's girl or commented on how she looked like my wife's side of the family. We took her to a local playground and she came running up with grass stains and a new friend in tow within minutes. My wife started her job, smaller office, friendlier people, an office manager who insists everyone signs birthday cards, including family members. Her first day, they sent her home with a big welcome basket and a handwritten note. She looked at it like it was some alien artifact, then laughed so hard she nearly cried. "No one here even knows who my dad is," she said. "They just want me to do my job and be nice." For me, settling in has been a combination of weird and thrilling. Some of my contract work transferred, I picked up 2 new freelance gigs, one at a coffee shop where I now spend my afternoons, and the regulars have no clue about my family saga. It's liberating. For the first time, when someone asks, "How's your week?" I answer with actual news, not anxiety. Family fallout back in the old city, things are continuing to splinter. Mill finally moved out, taking just what she needed, and is staying with a friend from her book club until papers are filed. The lawyer now has a P.O. box and a formal retainer. She's considering joining us in a few months, maybe in her own place, maybe with help from Sil. Sil told us 2 of the golden grandkids, her kids, ages 9 and 12, started asking why they don't have sleepovers with grandpa anymore. She told them simply, sometimes grown-ups need breaks from one another, too. The cousins video call now. Our daughter chats with them while running around the new house, showing off her hideout in the hall closet. She's adapting faster than either of us expected. Phil's community, well, apparently his narrative is that we were the problem all along. He's told neighbors we ran away from responsibility. For the first time, though, his stories aren't landing the same way. Mill and Sil's absence is noticed. People are talking. A mutual friend told Mill that a few wives in the community are taking notes, one even called Mill brave. There's something shifting, even if it isn't a revolution. Therapy, together and apart. We started remote therapy a week after the move. If I thought sitting in a therapist's office was hard, unpacking old wounds by webcam in a room surrounded by cardboard boxes is a whole other level of raw. My wife had her first solo session in the new city. She came out puffy-eyed, but clear. "I don't want my dad in my head anymore. Not as a judge, not as a voice, not even in my dreams." We celebrated by making pancakes for dinner. We've also made a habit of small check-ins. Every Saturday now, after our daughter's in bed, we each get one thing the other did that week that made us feel safe or loved. Last week, my wife picked, the way you didn't panic when I got that job offer, just sat with me and told me to choose for me, not anyone else. My pick? How you stood up for our little family, and for yourself, when even a year ago, you didn't know you could. Unexpected wins the best, and totally unexpected, thing? Our daughter. She's blossoming in ways we hadn't realized she was holding back. She pressed her face to the window last week, watching cars go by, and announced, "We're the kind of family that goes on adventures." We are, kiddo. We finally are. She sometimes asks when she'll see Grandpa again. My wife and I have talked about it at length with the therapist, and for now, we're honest. Right now, Grandpa is having big feelings, and we're giving him space. We're safe here, and we can choose who we spend our time with. She accepts this. She's starting to build memories that are only hers, not dictated by anyone's drama or anger. Moving forward, Mill and Sil are planning a visit in 2 months, after school lets out. They want to see the house, eat homemade pizza on our warped dining table, and bring cat toys for our new shelter kitten. Yep, we went full cliché, new house, new pet, new chaos. I find myself looking around every day, at the chipped paint, at my wife sipping coffee. She still flinches at loud noises, still has nightmares, but she smiles now, with her whole face. I see our daughter giggling, the kitten chasing after a toy, the sound of music in the background, and it feels peaceful. We fight sometimes, who doesn't, with a 4-year-old who thinks bedtime is a conspiracy. But for the first time, we're fighting as a team. The journey isn't over, there's still paperwork to finalize for Mill. My wife is expecting a final ambush email or call from her father when he realizes the separation isn't temporary. But the old cycle has been broken. We're not perfect, and we still flinch at shadows some days, but this new, messy, beautiful start, is more than I hoped for. I think about the first post I made and realize, I was desperate not to sink. Now, I'm not treading water, I'm standing on the shore, hand in hand with the people I love most. We made it. And whatever comes next, we're in it together. This time, no one gets left behind.